Welcome to Real Chat with Kat, the podcast that's all about real conversations for real transformation. I'm your host, Kat Polsinelli, professional speaker, MC, and best-selling international author. Here, we tackle the tough stuff, the mud that we all have found ourselves in. We talk about the pivots, the challenges, and the victories that shape our lives and our businesses. From overcoming trauma and finding your voice to navigating life's unexpected twists, we get raw, honest, and open. You'll hear from inspiring guests who share their stories of resilience, healing, and growth. Whether it's breaking through emotional abuse, embracing self-worth, or thriving in entrepreneurship, you'll find connection, empowerment, and the tools to keep you moving forward. So grab your favorite drink, settle in, and get ready for stories that hit home and conversations that make a difference. Let's get real together. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me today on this episode of Real Chat with Kat. We are back for another amazing episode. Oh, by the way, I wanted to give a real quick shout out to every single person that is listening right now, that has been listening before, and to all of my amazing guests that have been a part of this podcast. We just hit top 5% globally on listen notes, meaning we are being shared and listened to more than 3 million and something podcasts that are out there. This is insane. Being able to just talk to people, do something that I love to do, and bring things to you that you can connect with. And we are now in the top 5%. How cool is that? So thank you to everyone that is currently listening, that has been listening before, to all of my guests that have been out there. You guys are the reason why, one, I continue to do this, and two, the reason why we have made it as far as we had in this podcast. So thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to do a little bit of a solo episode again. And I really wanted to kind of dive into some vulnerability today, a little bit of openness and honesty with ourselves, and kind of really bring it in with empowering ourselves, especially as you know, we're moving into the end of the year. For a lot of us, we may be moving into some family dynamics. We're going to be moving into holidays and all the things that go with all of it, right? And I understand that we all have some form of silent battles, right? The ones that we fight behind with the smiles, the ones that are behind the titles that we put out there, the labels that we give ourselves or other people have given us, or the fantastic saying of, oh, I'm totally fine, right? And for years, I fought my own very quietly because I believed that strength meant silence, right? Or that I didn't need to burden other people with what was going on in my life, right? I didn't want to get in their way. I didn't want to take away from their time. I didn't want for them to worry or feel sorry for me. And I'm sure many of you listening out there can connect with that as well. But the truth is, that silence almost broke me. So today I want to talk a little bit about these invisible battles that we all are going through, have gone through, because these are the ones that we don't post about, right? These are the ones that nobody knows about, sometimes down to our family, our kids, our spouses. And I really want to have a conversation about why breaking that silence might actually end up saving your life. Now, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you may know my backstory. I was in an abusive relationship for 10 years. I was in there from 18 to 28. When I left that relationship, I had two boys. They were 10 and 7 at that time. They're now 21 and 17. So we've had a lot of growing, we've had a lot of healing, and a lot of space to not be vulnerable and finally choose to be vulnerable. And when I think about that, I think of all of the times that I stayed very silent when it came to the things that I was going through, right? That internal war that I was constantly battling, not only because of my situation, but, you know, what others might think, right? So there was the fear of leaving and not knowing what might happen, the fear of judgment by other people if I told them what happened, or feeling like people would feel sorry for me and help me out of pity, right? There's all these things that we're constantly battling inside of ourselves, right? And unfortunately, what that means is you are causing your own breakdown. Now, yes, were there external forces? Were there things that I was constantly dealing with that I didn't necessarily have control over or I didn't feel like I had control over? Absolutely. And each one of us have been in or may currently be dealing with a situation like that. And when you choose to be silent, when you choose to fight every single one of your battles alone, you are not able to live your life to the absolute fullest. And so, if you have ever felt like you had to keep it all together while falling apart inside, this episode is going to be for you. Oh, silent battles. So, silent battles aren't just trauma. I want to make that very clear because I do understand that not everyone has experienced abuse, not everyone has been in a bad relationship. There can be anything that weighs on your heart and goes unspoken is a form of a silent battle, right? For example, we've got shame. That's always a big one. Depression. We know that's a huge topic right now. Grief, low self-worth, imposter syndrome. I know that's a huge one with my entrepreneurs, right? And then we do have abuse, burnout. How many are you in a job that you don't like anymore and you continue to do it because you don't feel like you have a way out? That's a silent battle that you are facing. Maybe it's the fear of failure. Maybe it's loneliness. And we hide from these things because we are afraid. I know that for me, it was the fear of judgment or the fear of burdening others, right? Or the big one, we don't want to be seen as weak. And that is a word that I've really had to learn to redefine in how I speak it and how I utilize that term. You know, we live in a society where we're supposed to only show the happy. And, you know, with social media nowadays, it's very easy to get caught up in someone, quote unquote, living their best life, but you're not seeing all the things they're not sharing. And it's one of the reasons why, you know, if you follow me, there have been posts and reels where I am breaking down. I have been crying. I am giving you an insight to the darker days because even though I have an amazing life now and I have made so many changes and so many shifts, there are still days when things just suck. Now, I do my absolute best to consider those moments now instead of days, but it's all the same, right? We all have moments where we feel like that. And for whatever reason, we have been taught for generations that you keep your problems to yourself because you don't want to burden other people or you don't want them to know what is going on with you because they might judge you. They might not want to be friends with you anymore. Silence feeds our shame. Silence feeds the judgment in our head. It thrives in the dark. Now, I never understood this for quite a few years. And I kept my story and a lot of the things that I had been through completely to myself. And I mean, I didn't even tell my family. Now, my parents did know that I had been in a situation. They knew that some things had happened, but I never went into details. There was so much fear of judgment, of what someone might think, of being a bad mother, of you name it, I probably thought it. And so I just kind of, stuffed it in a box, packed it away, put a lot of duct tape around it, and pretended it didn't exist. And all the while, I was allowing it to continue to grow in that dark space. You see, what we don't face, we carry. And the longer that we carry it, the heavier that it gets. And I know that that may sound cliche, right? But I have seen it. I have lived that. I know what it's like to break down and just not know why I'm emotional, what is going on, get angry because that ends up happening, not wanting to let people see that side of me because for the longest time in my brain, crying meant that you had an issue or that you were weak. And as someone who was trying to come out of an abusive relationship, I never wanted people to think that I couldn't handle my shit. But this is something that I teach my boys to this very day. Emotions are absolutely normal. That's a part of us as a human being. And when we force those emotions to stay hidden, we are just building it upon building it until one day the duct tape comes off, the box explodes, and I guarantee you it's gonna be in an instance where you really didn't need that to happen, right? It could be with your spouse, it could be with your kids, it could be at work. Ooh, I've had that one happen. And I think that we as individuals need to redefine what society glorifies. Now, you've heard me say strong, right? That's a big one, not being weak. Ooh, here's another one that society tends to glorify, busy and productive. Okay, now how many of you listening have used that word? Oh my gosh, I am just so busy. There's so many things going on in my life. And now don't get me wrong. I was a single mother working 50 and 60 hours a week with two kids that had to go to after school care that I would then have to rush from work to go pick up minutes before they close, to get home, to do homework, to clean up, to all the things, right? I understand the term busy. And we've also kind of used that as like a blanketed statement for everything that we do in our life. And it's become this, if you're busy, then you're productive and you're getting things done. But if you decide to sit on the couch for an hour and watch your favorite TV or take a weekend to like do absolutely nothing because your body just needs time to rest, that becomes a problem. And that took me a really long time to understand the difference between a really full, slammed schedule and just staying busy for the sake of being busy. One of the things that I don't feel like that we honor and celebrate enough is honesty, what it takes to heal, and rest. Rest is something we all need. I can't tell you how many times in my career, in building my business, in starting my podcast, that I was always doing something. Oh, I got to check these emails and now I got to do this. And then I'm going to go do this. And I'm only going to take a 30-minute lunch because I need to make sure that I'm doing this. And I had a coach that I was working with, and she asked the question, right? Why Do you feel like you always have to be doing something? And I said, well, I don't mind watching a good TV show and things like that, that I don't mind that. She said, yeah, but like if you were to just kind of sit down, just go sit outside, right? No phones, no electronics, just sit and be. And I was like, well, I mean, I can do that for a short amount of time, but I don't want to be considered lazy. You've heard that word. How many times have you described yourself as that? And she said, well, are you a lazy person? I said, well, no. I get my stuff done. I do what I need to do for my kids. And she was like, have you ever been a lazy person? I was like, absolutely not. I've always, taken care of my things and gone above and beyond for other people and, yada, yada, yada. And she said, well, how are you going to be a lazy person then if that's not who you already are? Right? A moment to like really reflect. I was like, um, I don't, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a lazy person, so I guess I was really stumped, you guys, because so many of us have grown up in environments where our emotions, the way we felt about things, were dismissed, or it was considered dangerous or something you shouldn't do, or it's not ladylike, or it's not polite. Like, go ahead, put your label out there. We've all heard it, right? And even more concerning, we've probably taught it to our kids. We've probably repeated it to other people that we know. We've probably repeated it to ourselves. And so we've created a space where being able to just be honest, to make space for healing and working through things, or to just rest is risky or not right. And so that becomes this additional layer of silence, right? We end up silencing ourselves with all of that and preventing it because we think that we're protecting ourselves, right? We're doing what we're supposed to be doing. We're following what we have been taught, what we grew up with, or what we believe. But what we're actually doing is preventing ourselves from being able to connect, from being able to connect in the moment, from being able to connect with ourselves, to being able to connect with our emotions, to connect with others at a very deep level. We're severing that connection because for whatever reason, we're afraid, we don't have the capacity to make those moments for ourselves. And I know, myself, even to this day, I have to remind myself that silence is not always safe, right? Let me give you an example. I'm sure you've been here. You're with your spouse. You guys are driving and they say, I'm hungry. And you're like, yeah, I am too. And they're like, all right, where would you like to go? And you're like, oh, do I tell them? Well, I know that they don't like this. So if I say that, they're probably not going to like it anyway. And they're probably going to tell me no. So maybe I'll just, I'm totally fine. Whatever you want. Whatever you want. I'm good with whatever. When in the back of your brain, you're like, I really want tacos. Now, don't get me wrong. There have been times where I'm like, I have zero clue what I want to eat. I'm just hungry. Okay. But there have been so many times where I've been asked that, and my husband will even give me options. And I'm like, I don't know. You choose. And I have to remind myself that I am totally capable and it is safe to be able to speak up, to give that opinion, even if it's not where we go to eat. And for the longest time, I did that in other relationships. When things were brought up, I would stay to myself because my brain was like, here we go again, another argument. They're not going to do this. We as people are really great at creating entire scenarios in our head that aren't even real and playing it out. And then that becomes the reason why we don't say anything. Now, let me preface it that with I also understand for us that have been in unsafe environments that there's a really good chance we know that that's what's going to happen, right? In my abusive relationship, I knew what I could say and what I couldn't say, what I could get away with and what I couldn't get away with. So there are some dynamics to that, right? And now that I'm in a space where I'm in a healthy relationship, I have done a lot of healing. I have to remind myself that I still have the ability to speak up because we tend to convince ourselves that no one will understand or that they won't agree. Or we have that one scenario in the back of our brain where we spoke up to someone and we were shot down. And our brain held on to that. And so the next time we were in a similar situation, our brain immediately was like, whoop, we don't want to deal with that again. Don't bring that up. Let's not be in those emotions. That sucked. And so what you do is, again, you keep yourself silent and disconnected. I had to learn that silence just put me in a cage. And my brain saw that cage as we're keeping the bad things out. But what it was also doing is allowing me to think that every scenario across the board, regardless of who it was that I was talking to or what it was that I was doing, if there were any similarities, I already knew the outcome. And so we have to relearn those or assess the situation that we are in, right? I know that when I'm having a conversation with my husband, that he is not going to attack me or treat me the way that I have been in other relationships. And so when we are conversating and I do hold back with things, I take a moment to pause and I remind myself that I am safe. And I remind myself that I can have this conversation. And I also remind myself that we have had multiple conversations before and this has never happened. So, yes, brain, I understand that you see these scenarios, but that's the past. So that's an old belief and it's no longer true. And that's the great thing about us is we can change our beliefs constantly, every day. We just have to choose to. And for a lot of us, myself absolutely included, I had to find things that could build upon that new belief to get me out of that old cycle, right? Because when I used to bottle up emotions, it became stress. It became anxiety. I remember having a lot more physical illnesses back then than I do now. Or for a lot of us, and especially in our men, it's anger. So, with this form of silence, what we're doing is we're isolating ourselves and we're reinforcing that belief that we're alone or we can't trust them or we have to be careful what's going to happen because XYZ. When we choose not to speak, we're also denying others the permission to fill in the blanks. We're denying them the ability to say, well, this is what I was talking about. And we're denying ourselves the ability to see that things can be different because the brain prefers patterns. I'm just saying, it really does. And so that kind of leads into this other piece, which is when you get in these situations, when you're working to get out of them, that means that you're healing, right? You're working on doing things differently. And that healing isn't going to happen without honesty, right? Which means we have to speak up. And unfortunately, honesty sometimes is met with pain or the fear of hurting others, right? And so again, we kind of silence it down. And when we do that, we are then denying others of being able to see the truth. Now, don't get me wrong, some people don't want to see the truth. I deal with people like that. That's totally fine. However, it's not my job to make them comfortable. It is my job to believe in myself and to honor myself. There is an absolute way to be honest and to have conversations without being an a-hole. Had to learn that one too, because that silence, it isn't protecting us from the pain. It's taking your pain and it's protecting it from healing. Now, when we talk about breaking the silence, right? It's very easy to get caught up in, okay, well, what do you do? I just start speaking out to everybody? No, 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 I wouldn't. No, I don't suggest that. We don't need to just start dropping truth bombs all over the place, right? There's a time and place for everything. But what I do think that it begins with is us honoring ourselves, right? Let's start with there because I think that in so many instances we focus on honoring other people. We want to honor their emotions. We want to make sure that they're protected. And yes, I understand we all have good intent behind that, and there's another side to that. Some of that is not actually because you want to protect them from feeling hurt. It's also because you don't want to sit in that uncomfortable moment or that uncomfortable feeling because you had to be honest, right? You ever had your like eye twitch and you're like, oh, I don't want to say it. And what you say out loud is, no, 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 I didn't tell them because I didn't want to hurt them. And yes, like I said, part of that is totally true. But there's another whole piece of your brain called the subconscious. And that part is like, yeah, and we do not want to deal with what might come from that. I do not want to feel awkward. I do not want to feel uneasy. You ever thought of when somebody says, oh, I got a divorce, and you're like, oh, how do I answer? How do I answer that? What do I say? I'm sorry. Congratulations. Are you okay? You find yourself in these little bitty scenarios, and that's what it is. It's that uncomfortable feeling. And we've been taught to avoid that. We've been taught to respect others. You can respect people while respecting yourself. And I think that that's the biggest thing that we need to go back to is, are we respecting ourselves first? Because when you begin to respect yourself, you begin to also start looking at yourself and healing yourself and growing yourself. And that can lead into you breaking out of that silence of keeping everything pinned down in that box that you're trying to keep your elbow on from popping up because you don't want to deal with it. That box doesn't go away. It just continues to grow. So I say, let's start with acknowledgement, right? And this doesn't have to be acknowledgement to other people. We want to start with acknowledging the things that we're fighting silently to ourselves, right? We want to take ownership of it. Because when we take ownership, it allows us to feel that weird, uncomfortable feeling in our body. And then as we continue to acknowledge it, we actually become more aware of it. And that allows us to then move into the next stages, right? So when you're acknowledging it, find a way that works best for you. For some, that might be writing it down, right? Okay, I knew I went through this today. I didn't say anything. This is one of the things that I'm focusing on, or I'm working on, or I'm fighting because I don't want people to know. Write it down. And then write down why you feel like you need to keep it silent. Don't make it make sense. Don't use punctuation. You don't even have to capitalize anything. Just write it down. Give yourself a 5-minute timer and just let it flow. It is amazing some of the things that come out of your brain when you give your brain space to just blah. Just like we do when we're talking to people, right? You ever let somebody just blah and you just stand there for like a good 5 minutes? You're like, mm-hmm. Your brain needs that. Another way might be when it happens, kind of whisper it out loud, like, ooh, I just did that. And I noticed that was that. And now I'm feeling this, right? All we're doing is we're bringing awareness to that space, which means we are actually reconnecting with ourselves in a present moment with our emotions, right? Things that we generally are not taught in school or anything else, but yet everybody talks about online. And all of us are confused because we're like, I don't understand what all that means. Two, you want to create a safe space for yourself. Now, for you, that might be you and yourself sitting down, having a conversation with yourself, writing these things out, and making it a regular moment to really kind of reflect on these things. And then deciding, like, okay, this is not that bad. And I know that I want to work on it. So how am I going to tackle it? Right. It could also be that you find that one person that makes you feel safe. Maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a therapist, maybe it's a mentor. Hell, maybe it's your journal. Or again, your own self. You ever looked at yourself in the mirror and like talk to yourself? It's really weird at first, but you should be able to like love you, right? As we're going through this, we also want to make sure that we reframe the way that we see vulnerability. I don't mean that you just bawl your eyes out and blurt everything out in your entire life and just, make it a whole thing, but being able to say, like, I am so sorry. What you're saying is making me really uncomfortable and I'm trying to process it. Can you just give me a minute? Things like that. That's a form of vulnerability. And it's not weakness, but I'm acknowledging and I'm bringing it up to the surface and I'm making it a statement, right? Vulnerability is proof that you're alive. It's proof that you are growing, you are transitioning. And it also means that you are showing the courage that you matter, that you care for you. So when you start sharing, again, find that one person and understand that your story does not have to be shared with the world, right? I know everybody is blurting a lot of their stuff on TikTok and Instagram and all these things. And, for some of that, that's great. And not everybody needs to know your story. As much as you see it going down, not everybody needs to, and not everybody is meant to share it. I chose to share my story because I was hoping that I could empower other people that had been in similar situations. I made that choice, not because social media told me to, not because I felt like I needed to, because I wanted to. So make sure that you're sharing your story or your vulnerability or that battle that you're fighting with the right people because healing does not require an audience, only for you to be honest and honor yourself. Scars carry wisdom. And so when we have the ability to share it or acknowledge it, what we're doing is we're taking that survival space and we're shifting it into an act of service. We're shifting it into lessons that we get to now use that we can give impact to others, right? Even if it's not just sharing your story to share your story, you may have a conversation with a friend who ends up being open and vulnerable with you. And then you're like, oh, I went through this. I have this knowledge. This is what happened. I want to share with them what I have learned so that they can heal quicker. That is the point of working through our pain. So, as we kind of come to a close, I want you to really reflect on you. I got a couple questions for you, and I just want you to think on this. Are you currently allowing the battles that you are facing to stay silent, to stay hidden, and to define who you are? Because I personally believe that our battles do not define us. They might refine us, they might give us wisdom and lessons we can share with others, but they're not who I am. Do you find yourself pretending that everything is okay when you're around everyone? Do you find yourself trying to show how strong you are or that nothing is bothering you and you can handle it all? If you are, you're doing yourself a disservice. We are not meant to have everything okay in our lives all of the time. And we are not meant to handle all of the things all of the time. And look, I get it. I did it. When I got out of my relationship, my focus was, okay, my family has taken me in. They're giving me a space to have my kids here. I'm going to make sure I handle everything. I got this. I worked 40 and 50 hours a week, sometimes 60. I made sure that my kids were in school and had after school activities. I made sure that I cooked even for my family because, they were giving back to me. So I needed to make sure I gave back to them. I did activities every single weekend. If I had people that needed something, I'd be like, oh, I can totally help. I can totally help. Let me do that. All the while, I was fighting in court. I was battling with attorneys. I was dealing with cops. I was dealing with someone who was constantly stalking me. And no one knew I was fighting that. I chose to pretend that it wasn't happening because in my brain, I didn't want to burden people and I didn't want people to feel sorry for me. And let's just be like really super clear right now. I can't tell you how many people that I have opened up to, that I've shared my story with, and there is not a space of, I'm so sorry. I feel so bad for you. There is a space of empathy where it's more of, I hate that you had to go through that. And I honor what you are sharing. I have received that more than I have ever received someone's pity. So I don't know who in the hell told us that people were going to pity us, that they were going to feel sorry for us. And don't get me wrong, there definitely are people that do that. But I can tell you from my personal experience, it's never been that way. It's people that truly honor what I am saying, feel for what I have been through, and embrace the fact that I am willing to share it with them so that they can now take that and use it in their own knowledge or use it to grow themselves or use it to help someone else that they know. That is what I have received. So I challenge you to kind of put that on the back burner when those kinds of things come up. Now, again, you also know who it is that you are surrounding yourself with. So yes, I'm sure that there are people that you're like, I already know how they're going to take it. I already know how they're going to react, right? You have a pattern, you've seen it happen with other people. I understand that we have people like that. And when you are working to heal yourself, those are not the kind of people that you want to surround yourself with. I've always heard the saying of you're most like the five people you surround yourself with. And I always told myself, like, no, I'm not. I am me, and I do exactly what the hell I want to do. But what's really interesting is it's the patterns and the personalities and the conversations that you will bring yourself to, right? You're still your own person, but what you'll find is, right, there are still certain things that you do that are similar to the people that are around you. Because we, as human beings, even if you crave being absolutely alone, we crave community. We crave people understanding us and being there for us. And so if you notice that you are in the same cycle, you're in the same patterns, and you're like, but I am shifting this, I want you to pay attention to what is going on around you, right? For example, I had a group of people that I really enjoyed hanging out. I really liked them. They're great people. And there were some jokes that was like a little harsh, or a little like, ooh, don't say that one out loud. The things that you joke about, that you shouldn't necessarily share on the internet, right? And what I noticed was as I started healing myself and becoming more open to understanding where other people were coming from versus judging, those jokes and those kinds of conversations actually made me uncomfortable because I didn't relate. I didn't agree with it. And so I began to separate myself. I didn't go out every time that they wanted to have a get together. I didn't laugh at all of the jokes that they made. Or if they said something and I found myself laughing for a split second, and I knew afterwards, like, ooh, I would say something like, that's a harsh one. I started speaking up, and now I don't hang out with them really at all. Again, not that they're bad people. It's just I honor myself and who I am, and who I choose to put myself around is going to create the way that I want to live my life. And so I want to surround myself with people that challenge me, that see the things that I can do and then ask me, what are you going to do more of? What's next? How do you want to grow this? People that are willing to do the same, because that's what I want. And again, this has taken me years to understand and figure out. So if you're in the middle of this, please don't give up. Please don't give up. Celebrate your small wins. Continue to work on that. Pull yourself away from those people that aren't aligning with you anymore and leave the doors open for others to walk in who will fill the seats that you are looking to fill. Because you have the ability right now to be hurting and feel imperfect and to be healing. You can be absolutely breaking down and still rising to becoming something you want to be. All at the same time, all on the same playing field. That's the beauty of being human. We're all imperfect and we're all on our own journeys. And still, crisscrossing paths with other people and meeting people when we need to, and finding those that have lessons for us to understand or to learn or to help them, and then they move on. It's the most beautiful dance that you ever get to be a part of. And it gives you the opportunity to speak your truth, even if that is quietly. And when you start to do that, you are actually making space and giving others around you the permission to do the same. Because whether you think it or not, someone is looking up to you. Someone is seeing some of the things that you do and wishing they could be where you're at. Think about that for a moment. So when you lean into you, you give others that permission to do the same. And we're all looking for that. We're looking for that permission. We're looking for that validation. We're looking for that sign. So do me a favor. I want you to take a moment right now. And I just want you to be. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath in through your nose. Hold it for a count of 4. And then let it out through your mouth. Shake it out. Move your arms around. Move your body around. And know that you've got this. No matter where you are at in your life, you've got this. You've already been through things. You'll continue to have things in your life that happen, and you will continue to move through it. That is the beauty of being human. Even the waters that run through the river run over rocks and hit trees and bounce back off of things, yet it still keeps moving. And if you're someone like me, it's absolutely beautiful to watch. You only have one life. Live your life for you. Work on honoring you. And see how the world responds back. Because I have found that it is one of the coolest things that has ever happened to me. And it has brought me in contact with so many amazing individuals. And most of them have been on this podcast so that they could share that knowledge and information with you. So start small, but choose today. Not next week, not when you're feeling better, not in the new year, now. Because you are important now. You are courageous now. And you have the ability to start breaking that silence, opening up that box, and letting those things go. Thank you so much for being a part of the podcast today. I hope that you are able to really reflect and take something away from this that is going to directly impact you or someone you know's life. If you know of somebody else that might be struggling silently, that is maybe starting to open up even, share this podcast episode with them. Give them the opportunity to get their own takeaways, have their own light bulb moment. And as always, do one thing positive for someone each and every day and see the difference that it makes in your life. Catch you later. Thank you so much for tuning in to Real Chat with Kat today, where real stories meet real solutions. If you love today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review on Apple, and share this with someone who may also need to hear this as well. Let's also keep the conversation going. Follow me on socials at The Lotus Effect, connect with our incredible guests, and remember, you are never alone. Your story matters, and you have the ability and the power to rewrite it. You always have a choice. Until next time, stay strong, stay inspired, and keep showing up as the incredible, unstoppable